Hi, my name is Laura Moretti and I teach early modern Japanese literature at the University of Cambridge. This video is part of a series of videos that are designed to introduce you to the basics of how to read the Japanese cursive that was used in early modern materials, printed or handwritten. This is session 7 and we will be concentrating on a very easy text written in the written style known as sōrōbun. This is conceived as a session that builds on session 5, where I give you basic information about sōrōbun. So please, before delving into this video, do have a look at session 5, which is on our website, www.wakanacambridge.com. So as I said, today we're going to read an easy text written in sōrōbun, and it is going to be a printed text, and it is an advertising material, which is part of this fantastic resource, which is kept at the General Library of the University of Tokyo. It is a collection entitled Kunshujo, and it contains an incredible number of early modern advertising materials. A lot of them is what we would normally refer to with the word hikifuda. So today we are going to work on a particular hikifuda that deals with an early modern bookshop. Suzuki Toshiyuki, in this fantastic book about Ezoshiya, has also introduced a number of hikifuda that are part of the same collection. Suzuki Toshiyuki is looking at a type of bookseller which is known as Ezoshiya, whereas today we will be looking at something different, which is about a bookseller that deals with shomotsu. There was a difference between ezoshi or soshi and shomotsu. There is a great deal written about the topic, so I will not delve into that. But today we're looking at materials that Suzuki Toshiyuki is not including in his study. Now, why did I choose, of all the possible publicity materials in this text, why did I choose this one? Because it ties in with the topic of the Summer School 2022, which is around the business of books in early modern Japan. In August 2022, we will be looking at a lot of materials that deals in some way or another with the production or the consumption of books in the 17th, 18th and 19th century. So today, as I said, we're going to read a text which is written in very easy sōrōbun and is part of this collection. So let's delve into our material by looking first of all at the name of the chap that we are going to deal with. The name is inscribed in non-cursive characters, so they're quite easy to read. Maruya Zenbee, that's the name of the publisher and bookseller that we're going to deal with. As I mentioned before, this publisher and bookseller deals with shomotsu. So we will read a little bit more about what type of books fell under this remit of shomotsu in the case of Maruya Zenbee. How do we read this? I would venture with o shomotsu no tokoro, and again, this is in non-cursive, so in terms of transcription, it pretty much is what you see on the page. Maruya Zenbee is a known publisher. This is a page from Kinsei Shorin Hanmoto Soran, which is the first port of call when looking up early modern publishers in Japan and bookshops in Japan. And I'm moving my face here, but as you can see, the entry for Maruya Zenbee gives a lot of information, including his addresses. We'll come back to the address in a little while. There are a couple of titles, and there is also a note saying that he is the Maruya known for kappazuri, and kappazuri indicates a form of stencil printing. And there is an example of his kappazuri on the ARC website of Ritsumeikan University. As you can see, the publisher is indeed our Maruya Zenbee, and this is printed by the technique of stencil. If we go back, if we look for how many books are associated to his name on the Union Catalogue of Early Japanese Books, we will see that 232 titles come up. There might be more by looking at other databases, but this gives you the idea that he was a pretty prolific chap. If we go back to the Hanmoto Soran, we will see that one of the addresses that are given is one in Kyoto. He was based in Kyoto on Sanjo-dori, at the intersection with Teramachi-dori, at the entrance to the west. And we also have dates about this address, when this address was used, between 1815 and 1841. Now, if we go back to our material, which is not dated, we do note that the address is indeed the same that I've just read out for you. We are in Kyoto. We are on the Sanjo-dori, Sanjo Avenue. Please be careful when you transcribe this character. In this case, there is not the ninben, so this is the way we need to transcribe it here. We are at the intersection with Teramachi-dori, just Teramachi in the address. And then we are indeed at the entrance to the west, Nishi. And please pay attention that there is this he here. I'll come back to this in a minute. And we know that we are on the Kitagawa, on the northern side of things. Now, this little bit that you find here is indeed he. It's half he, and that is one way in which the hiragana or the katakana he could be written at the time, just half of it, the right side of this kana. As I said, this was a very Maruya Zenbee was a very prolific publisher, and of the many books published by him, we can see, for example, this copy that is kept at the university library here in Cambridge. And this is the back matter. And as you can see, there is a colophon, the original colophon that includes Maruya Zenbee as one of other publishers involved in the publication of this book. This is the original colophon, the kanki, and then we have an additional material, back matter, where we have again what we would consider to be a colophon with the same address that we have seen in the advertising that we're working on. You can see the little he here, which is much clearer in this particular colophon. And we also see the publicity for other books published by Maruya Zenbee, and they all deal in one way or another with farming. And they are actually presented as key texts, must-go texts in farming. We also see this other colophon that is in the copy of the Miyako Annai Michishirube in at Waseda University Library, and you can see again the kanki, the okuzuke, and you can see again nishi e iru, nishi e iru machi. The kitagawa seems to be missing in all this, but again, it is the same publisher. And in this case, the back matter introduces publicity for other texts that he published around travel titles and little blurbs. We have, so you could really do fantastic research about who Maruya Zenbee was, going and accessing all the books that he published. This is not what we're going to do today. We're going back to our advertising material, and below the indication that he was dealing with shomotsu, we have a list, again in non-cursive, of the types of books that he would have published. My transcription dispenses of kyuji, of old style characters. Again, there is an explanation about this in the first session of this series of videos. So kyuji, the older style kanji, becomes shinji in my transcription. And you can see he was publishing books about Shinto, about Buddhism, about Confucianism, about medicine. He was publishing collections of Japanese poetry, collections of Chinese poetry, collections of haikai poetry, war tales or military books. He was also publishing Chinese books, books about calligraphy, manuscripts, and illustrated books. As you can see, this idea that shomotsu were katai hon, were kind of hard, you know, scholarly, sort of high up books, is very much mirrored in the first 2 and a bit column. Ehon, again, research should be done in what kind of ehon Maruya Zenbee was actually involved in the production of. From the point of view, paleographically, from the point of view of early modern paleography, this presents no problem at all. It's easy peasy, it's non-cursive. So let's now move into the text on the left, which addresses directly his customers. And because it addresses directly his customers, it is written in sōrōbun. In a way, it is a sort of correspondence that the publisher is initiating with his audience, with his potential customers. The title of this little bit indicates, again in non-cursive, indicates that we are dealing with the purchase and the selling of old books, used books, furuhon baibai. So we do expect that the text deals in some way or another with Maruya Zenbee buying and selling old books, used books. So working as a furuhonya. Let's now read the first line of this text. Gofuyou no oshomotsu oharai no shina. And I stop here because this is the content of what we are talking about, or better, Maruya Zenbee is writing about. The reading for the kanji on go or is very complicated. In this case, go fuyo is normally the reading for the character plus fuyo. Shomotsu, some people read it as go shomotsu, some others o shomotsu. I've learned o shomotsu, so I stick to that. And then we come back to this word o harai, but that is again a sort of fixed reading. We'll see the meaning in a little while. And then no shina. Oharai indeed indicates something that you want to dispose of. So that ties in with gofuyo no oshomotsu oharai no shina. So we are dealing with unwanted books and things that are to be disposed. Let's look a little bit more at paleographically at this text. The only really difficult bit is about this on. The first on is pretty much a sort of semi-cursive rendering of the character. The second is very much done in the same way. The third one is really very difficult to identify unless you're used to the way in which on can be rendered in calligraphy. And as you can see, this rendering before harai is very much similar to this one or to this one. Other than that, I think that everything is pretty clear. We will go back to this kanji here on the second line, so please do bear with me for a little while. ご不要のお書物お払いの品. What happens with these things? Let's go to the second line and I will stop here, even though we are in the middle of the sentence. So the sentence is not over. It is actually one sentence, the whole thing. But I'll stop there because we can. 値段よろしく申し、お値段よろしき申し受け候間. Okay, let's start with the first compound, nedan. Normally, we don't use this character for nedan, for price, but we have to transcribe, this is a diplomatic transcription, we have to transcribe what we see on the page. In this case, this is the kanji that has been used. And actually, when working on komonjo, more archival, historical materials, these are normally the characters that very often, not normally, but very often are used for the word nedan, for price. Yoro shiku, I'll come back to this in a little while. Moshi uke, I'll come back to this. I would like to go straight to the end of the sentence for soro aida. You might think, where is soro? Soro is this little stroke here. And as you can see, a little bit like we have seen for on, go, for soro, we start from something which is semi-cursive to very much cursive rendering of the same character. We see a lot of this shape here in for soro, but we also see this sort of just a little chong soro, we could call it, and it is just a little chong. Soro needs to be there because this is a text in sōrōbun, and soro, in a way, as I explained in session 5, works a little bit like a sort of kutoten, as a sort of full stop or a comma. It does identify that the sentence is coming to a halt there. It might continue as because it is a secondary clause, but pretty much we are getting to a halt there. So this is soro. So when you're reading sōrōbun, always think there must be a soro at the end of the sentence, either a main clause or a secondary clause. Where is it? Do I have this sort of chon soro? It looks like a little tail attached to a kanji. So you just needed to get into that frame of mind to look out for soro. I'll come back to this in the next sentence as well, but for the time being, the next character is also very important when it comes to sōrōbun grammar. This character is the character for aida. This is a very conventional way for rendering the character aida in cursive. So pretty much the mon radical becomes this upper bit, and then underneath this is the connector to hi, which is inside here. So Aida is really one of one of the most conventional ways of writing Aida in cursive. Now, sōro Aida is a structure that we see a lot in sōrōbun. As I said, this is really entry-level sōrōbun grammar, but sōro Aida means something like de arimasu no de, indicates a because, a cause, okay? And what you see on the left here is taken from the sōrōbun manual that we have created for the summer school. This is the 2022 edition, and this manual is accessible to those who are enrolled on the summer school. Now, we have made sense of nedan. We have seen a sōro Aida. Let's try and make sense of what comes before. Yoroshiki, this kanji, I am using the normal kanji, in this case, the radical that you see here does not match with this, but I am normally converting itaiji or variant characters into normal kanji. That's why you see my yoroshi with this kanji. Now, this character here is very, very important in sōrōbun because it is a character used phonetically for the ending of shi adjectives, either as shiki or shiku. Shiki in rentai ke, shiku in renyo ke. These are some examples of shi adjectives that behave in the same manner. You have the character, for example, ashi for warui, bad. And in order to conjugate it as ashiki or ashiku, this character is used phonetically. And this character appears in its cursive form in the text we are reading. Nedan yoroshiki. Probably I would go with yoroshiki, implying that there is a koto there. But it is also true that it connects to a verb, moshi uke. So you could decide to read it as renyo ke. The meaning doesn't change, and we'll go back to the meaning in a little while. This yoroshiki, yoroshiku, is followed by the verb moshi uke, moshi uke. As you can see, moshi uke could use either this uke here or this other. If you look at the character here, there is the gomben, the radical with go, and then on the right we have the rendering of this sei aoi. Moshi uke, I need to read it as uke because it is followed by soro, and therefore moshi uku, a shimo nidan verb at the time, needs to be conjugated in renyo ke because it is followed by soro. You remember from session 5, these things would be indicated in furigana in manuals that at the time taught how to read and write sōrōbun. In this case, they assume that you are able to read sōrōbun, so you do it in your hand. Moshi u. You think, okay, uku is the verb, I need to conjugate it to connect it to soro. In order to connect it to soro, I need renyo ke. Therefore, moshi uke soro aida. And moshi uke means お願いを申し上げる、お願いをしてその許可を得るという意味で、とってもいいと思うんですね。So we have read up to this point, ご不要のお書物、お払いの品、値段、よろしき申し受け候間。So, because I negotiate good prices for your unwanted books or other stuff that you want to get rid of, and then we continue to read the sentence. So we are moving to the next bit. 他 多少に限らず. And I stop here for a second. 多少に. And if you look at the pointer of my mouse, my pointer, you will see that I start from here, 限る, the verb, and then I go back to this thing here. I read it ず, and in order to read it ず and connect it to 限る, I have conjugated 限る, 限らず, and I read it ず because then the sentence continues. So we are still in the middle of a sentence and it is arenyoke. So what happens with this ず? In sōrōbun, you may recall from session 5, and if you have access to the manual, you will read more about this in the manual. In sōrōbun, the majority of the text is written in kanji. And we're dealing with a form of grammar, which is a sort of hybrid between Japanese and literary Chinese or classical Chinese. In order to render something negative, this kanji here for fu is used, and it is put before the verb it modifies. In this case, we have the verb kagiru, and it is modified by this kanji that comes before it. The kanji comes before, but it is used as the jodoshi for the negative. And the jodoshi for the negative in classical Japanese is zu, and is to come after the verb. So like in kanbun kundoku grammar, you just read first read the verb kagiru, conjugated kagira, in order to connect it to the jodoshi zu, kagira zu. Now, a few things needs to be kept in mind. First of all, is the shape of this kanji. And as you can see here, it can look very much like semi-cursive here. This shape, you will notice, is exactly the same shape that we find in the first line for the same fu-yo. In that case, it's not used as a jodoshi, it's used as in a compound made of this kanji and this kanji, and as a compound it can be read even nowadays as fuyo. The same kanji here is rendered in much more cursive, in a much more cursive way, and it is very similar to the kana for fu, the hiragana fu. And this is because the jibo, we explained about jibo in the previous sessions, the jibo for this hiragana fu is indeed the same kanji that you see here. Okay. So in this case, we recognize that this fu hiragana looking thing is not hiragana, it is the character, this character here. We also recognize that differently from the first line, it is not used for a compound, but it is used as a jodoshi, the jodoshi zu for the negative. It's an auxiliary verb for the negative. So kagiratsu. This is one of many jodoshi that are written in kanji and come before what they modify in sōrōbun. We will see another one today, but there are many. 多少に限らず meaning-wise means no matter whether you have many or few, no matter whether you have a big quantity or a small quantity. Okay, it's just said that when you want to get rid of your old books or anything that you don't need anymore, we can negotiate, we will negotiate for good prices. Because of that, no matter whether you have many or few things, and then the sentence continues. So this is the next bit of the sentence. I am going to read it all in one go, and then I will go back and explain bit by bit what I think could be useful to know. So I first by reading it all. ご用、仰せつけられ、くだされ候よ。恋願いあげ、たてまつり、候。以上。Okay, let's go slowly. The first two kanji should not be a problem. The same go that we have seen in the first line and yo that we have seen in the first line. So in this case, it's just the word goyo. Goyo. What comes after is a little bit complicated. This is probably the most complicated bit of this text in terms of sōrōbun grammar. But again, I'd like to point out that when it comes to sōrōbun, this is really, really easy sōrōbun. Okay, so super entry level. Okay, let's try and understand what goes on here. I will reread it once more, and I will put there the reading. 仰せつけられ、くだされ候よ。So what is going on here? First of all, this character here, which is repeated twice before this verb made of two kanji, osetsuku, and before this verb, which is the verb kudasu, this kanji, which is the same, comes before and is indeed a jodoshi, an auxiliary verb. It comes before in the writing, but I have to read it after I have read and conjugated the verb. So first I need to read the verb osetsuku. Then I need to go back and read these jodoshi. The same for kudasu. Then I need to go back and read this jodoshi. So what is this jodoshi? The jodoshi is that, is what you see here. The character is the same character as higaisha no hi. And it comes before the verb it connects to, but it is used in sōrōbun to render what in classical Japanese is the jodoshi, the auxiliary verb, ru, raru. So as we have seen for fu, we need to do a lot of steps in order to familiarize ourselves with all this. First of all, I need to familiarize myself with the shape of this kanji. And as you can see, the shape here and the shape down here is not exactly the same. The shape up here is more akin to, I would say, this area here, or this one here, whereas the second cursive rendering of the same character is closer to what in these dictionaries appear as this form. It is very similar to ra, the hiragana ra. There is no connection between this kanji and the hiragana ra in reality, but shape-wise, it can appear very similar to a hiragana ra. It is not a hiragana ra, it is this kanji. So first, we really need to get used to the shape of this kanji that is there to represent the jodoshi ru raru, but it is a kanji and it is put before the verb it connects to. Then I really need to bring to mind what I've learned in bungo grammar, because ru raru can have three meanings: the passive, the potential, the honorific, and also has its own conjugation. And on top of that, we have to choose between ru and raru. So just to make our lives easier, I've just brought up here what I normally use with my students, among other materials when I teach classical. And as you can see, ru normally connects to the yodan verb, the nahen verb, and the dahen verb. In this case, kudasu is indeed a yodan verb, so kudasu needs to connect to ru. Or for any other verb, we need to use raru. And osetsuku is a shimo nidan verb, so it belongs to these other verbs, and therefore this kanji here needs to be read as raru. So the first difficulty really is in reading it is to bring to mind your bungo grammar, but that's really what you have to do with sōrōbun. Plus, you have to conjugate the verb in order to connect it to ru, in this case after a yodan verb, or raru, in this case after a shimonidan verb. So we need the mi zenke, and therefore osetsuke, then I need to attach raru, but then I need to conjugate raru because the sentence continues. I choose the renyoke rare. I repeat, osetsuku is a shimo nidan verb. In order to connect to this jodoshi, which is ru or raru, I need to choose raru. And I need to conjugate osetsuku in mizenke, osetsuke rare. Raru itself is conjugated into rare, renyoke, because the sentence continues. I do the same mental gymnastic with this combination of ru, raru, and kudasu. So kudasu is a yodan verb, so it connects to ru. It needs to be in mizenke, kudasa, to connect to ru, but ru then is connecting to soro. That means that ru needs to be in renyoke, because this is what soro wants. Therefore, altogether is indeed osetsukerare kudasare soro, followed by yo, which is used in sōrōbun in order to ask for something. In modern Japanese, it would be something like goyo o oshatte kudasaru yo. Goyo ga areba oshatte kudasaru yo. Oshatte itadaku yo. This idea. Because in this case, the ru would be with the function of honorific. So rendering osetsuke, which is already honorific for you, more honorific, and then kudasu. So oshatte kudasaimasu yo. Goyo ga areba oshatte kudasaimasu yo. Yo makes sense here, even in modern Japanese, like in sōrōbun, because it is followed by the verb that we will see in a little while. Before that, again, the soro is the chon soro that we have seen already in the second sentence here. So it is very much the same idea. It's just chon, but you expect soro to be there. Osetsukerare kudasare soro yo. And then we are moving to the next bit. And final bit of this sentence. The sentence actually ends there finally. And in this case, I read it as koi negai age tatematsuri soro. As you can see, again, I start with what is in black in this slide. Koi negau is one verb, read as koi negau, which means really negau. Koi negai age, so this works as a compound, and koi negai agu is again a shimo nidan verb. After I've read this, I need to go back to what is in green here, which is a supplementary verb that indicates the humble register, and it is read as tatematsuru. Now, as you can see here, tatematsuru can be rendered in very different cursive ways. What we have in this particular case is quite similar to this one. Yeah. It comes before the verb that it modifies, and it is read tatematsuru, and it makes the register humble. So going back, I really need to read koi negai ge first, conjugated in ren-yoke to connect to tatematsuru. And tatematsuru itself needs to be conjugated in ren-yoke because it is followed by soro. At this point, we have really understood. Soro wants the ren-yoke before. So koi negai ge tatematsuri soro. And in modern Japanese would be really onegai itashimasu ne. だからご用があればぜひおっしゃってくださいますようお願い申し上げます。And then we end the sentence with 以上. They like this expression 以上. That's done, dusted. I've finished this. Yeah. This koi negai age tatematsuri soro was actually used also in other form of addressing the audience. For example, the kojo that were this sort of addressing the audience in kabuki plays or various kabuki related events, and in other sort of occasions where you would address from a stage your public. So in this case, we really have seen that this zu here, this raru, this ru, and this tatematsuri, they are all characters that come before what they modify as per Chinese grammar. But when read aloud in sōrōbun, we need to convert them according to, move them around according to the Japanese, classical Japanese grammar, and move them after what they modify. Kagirazu, osetsukerare, kudasare, so. Koi negai age, backwards, tatematsuri, and soro. As I said in session 5, and as I explained also in the manual, this is really key to sōrōbun. It retains a certain, albeit minimal, features of classical Chinese of kanbun kundoku. And these are the few examples in this entry-level text. So if we reread it all, we learn what this bookshop wants us to know about his purchase and his business in furuhon, in used books. ご不要のお書物お払いの品値段よろしき申し受け候間多少に限らずご用仰せつけられくだされ候よ恋願い上げ立祭り候以上。Because we negotiate good prices for any unwanted books or things that you want to get rid of, no matter whether you have many, no matter what the quantity is, please do let us know if you have any use for this service of ours. Charming idea that this Maruya Zenbee is a publisher. He's publishing a lot of books. We have seen some in the previous slides. He is also selling the books, but he's also buying and selling old books. And recently there is a new book by Hachiguchi Konosuke who is looking at Edo no Furuhonya. It's really a fantastic book about all the different aspects of the book trade in the Edo period. So if you're interested in knowing more about early modern publishers, there are a lot of resources. This is a fairly recent book, and it contains very interesting information about also their side as furuhonya, as antiquarian bookseller or booksellers or used materials. So thank you very much for listening, and enjoy more sōrōbun and more texts as you continue your study and we continue our studies. Bye.